want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well.
Hello. The guy.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. Big day ahead. Not only do we have a load of stories for you guys, Tucker's got a special on 9/11 apparently. That ought to be interesting. The Ukrainians can go in a direction that could be disastrous. We talk about that in a little bit. Plenty of Epstein news. Was Donald Trump an FBI informant? That's the claim of the Speaker of the House, at least for a little while. So the implications of that are super relevant. But most importantly today, Marjorie Taylor Greene will be on the program in a little bit. And she's going to tell us about the dramatic she's going to do tomorrow. So big news here on the Young Turks. Marjorie Taylor Greene in a little bit with very important news about what's going to happen in Congress next. All right, so before we get to that, we've got some news for you guys.
Well, before we get to Marjorie Taylor Greene's interview, I thought it would be worth kind of doing a follow-up with a pretty bold claim that was made by House Speaker Mike Johnson.
And he's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down.
Well, there you have House Speaker Mike Johnson telling CNN's Manu Raju that President Donald Trump was an FBI informant who helped take Epstein down, which is a bold claim to make. And it also happens to be untrue, which is probably why he had his office walk back the statement on Sunday, issuing a statement that reads, quote, "The speaker is reiterating what the victim's attorney said, which is that Donald Trump, who kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, was the only one more than a decade ago willing to help prosecutors expose Epstein for being a disgusting child predator." Now, that's not what the victim's attorney said, number one. Number two, referring to someone as an FBI informant is very different from someone who might have cooperated or answered questions from investigators in regard to Jeffrey Epstein. And one other thing that's important to remember is that Trump and Epstein were one-time friends who did have a falling out, but the falling out wasn't over Epstein's disgusting predatory behavior. The falling out, and Trump himself has admitted this, had to do with a fight the two of them had over a property in 2004. Trump is the one who ended up winning and obtained that property, even though Epstein also wanted it. But Brad Edwards, an attorney who represents many of the victims, told reporters that Trump has done an about face on Epstein since 2009. I'm gonna read you those quotes in just a minute, but Cenk, did you wanna jump in?
Yeah, so look guys, this Mike Johnson thing is really interesting. And no, I don't think he's lying. I think he's telling the truth.
You think that Trump was an FBI informant?
Yes, I do.
Oh, interesting, why do you think that?
Number one, that's a super weird thing to make up. You don't just slip up and go, oh yeah, John Iadarola is a CIA agent. You're like, wait, what? Why would that even pop into your head? Okay, because it's also very specific. It's not, oh, he helped loosely. He said he was an FBI informant.
I know, but when a politician speaks, they're usually lying, and oftentimes they say very specific things that end up being totally
I know, but
untrue.
think about it.
Okay.
Being an FBI informant is a disaster. That is not a thing that Trump would want anyone to know. Why? Because it's a bad idea to turn in a child predator? No. No, because usually they don't just come and go, hey, Bob, down the street, you wanna be an FBI informant? No, they turn you into an FBI informant after they have evidence against you.
Oh my God, you know what? You're right, you're right. I hadn't even considered that, you're right.
So that's why when he slips up, he even has like this little hitch in his head where he goes like, oh, oops, I shouldn't have said that. You could almost see it in the video.
Can we cue that video up again? Yeah, that's actually a really good point, Cenk. I hadn't thought about that. Wow. Okay. So
there's more on that in a second, but yeah, let's see if we can see when he says it and how he reacts immediately after.
And he's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down.
Did you see it? He was an FBI informant. He did that. Like, oh wait, I shouldn't have said that, right? So now I'm over-interpreting. You could say, hey, don't worry about the video. Look, I didn't see what you saw. That's not important. What's important is he said he was an FBI informant. That is not a random thing you make up. Then why is he walking it back today? He's walking it back today because people are gonna start asking the question I'm asking, which is why? Why was he an FBI informant? And the number one group of people who are FBI informants are mobsters, as an example, who were caught and are gonna go to prison for 20, 30 years or the rest of their life unless they turn on their boss, right? And so then they become an informant. Nobody ever becomes an informant out of the blue. Trump wasn't working at the FBI.
Right.
And the FBI flips him into an informant. So then you can't help but ask, why? What did Trump do?
That is such a good point, and I hadn't thought of that. Now, is that true though, that no one is ever an FBI informant unless they're like essentially coerced into doing it because they engaged in wrongdoing and they don't want to be prosecuted for it?
So no, I can't say that it's true 100% of the time, but is it true an overwhelming percentage of the time? Yes. So I can envision a couple of scenarios. Somebody's maybe in a family or in a gathering that they didn't realize had bad guys in it. And then the FBI approaches them and says, you're a good guy. You were in this gathering, but you didn't know, but they're mobsters. So can you be an informant for us because you would save a lot of lives or et cetera. So it's not impossible, but the reason why that's very rare is because most of the time the standard operating procedure is you flip people into becoming informants.
But Jake, it's amazing because now what we're talking about at this moment sheds some light on what is being referenced in this quote that I'm about to read to you. So this is Brad Andrews, an attorney who represents many of Epstein's victims. So this individual told reporters that Trump has done an about face on Epstein since 2009. Edwards said that when he spoke to Trump in 2009, Trump was friendly to the victim's plight and did not think that it was a hoax and was trying to help. And now it seems like all of a sudden somebody is in his ear and he's not, Edwards said. So I'm hoping he'll come back to where he was back in 2009, be on the side of the victims and stand with us. Now, go ahead.
Jumping in again there. So guys, look, there is some percentage chance, you can put any percentage, usually based on your perspective on what that is, that Trump just volunteered because he knew Epstein, he did, right? So that makes it plausible. And he was in the same social circles, so that makes it plausible that Trump raised his hand and said, hey, I'd like to help your investigations, right? Okay. Or the reason why the attorney for the victims is saying, oh yeah, back in the day, Trump was really helpful, was because he was an FBI informant who was forced to be helpful and was helpful to the victims back then. So that's interesting and amazing in and of itself. But then what he's alluding to is perhaps more remarkable. Why did he switch to now being opposed to the investigations and calling them a hoax when the attorney knows, the victims know, everybody knows, he knows it's not a hoax. He was in fact involved in it. So now it's because Mike Johnson, maybe he had a verbal hiccup, right? But when the attorneys for the victims confirm that Trump did help, it shows that he was involved. And again, normally they don't pick somebody out of the street to be involved. They pick someone who was already involved and that they had evidence against.
Well, with all of that context in mind, Congressman Thomas Massie, a libertarian who is really at odds with Donald Trump on this issue, recently went on ABC's This Week and he had some thoughts of his own. Let's take a look.
The lawyers for the victims said that Donald Trump had been helpful in 2009 in their case by giving them information, but being an informant implies some formal connection and ongoing relationship with the FBI. I don't know what that's all about. I think the speaker needs to clarify that. And if it's a hoax, why was Donald Trump an informant to a hoax?
Yeah, and Trump does continue referring to this as a hoax. So if there's evidence that the president of the United States, at a time when he wasn't president, of course, back in 2009, was cooperating with the FBI, potentially serving as an FBI informant, what has happened that leads him to now refer to this very real issue as a hoax? Again, it's not a hoax.
And one more thing about that, think about it. If Donald Trump had voluntarily helped to get relief for those victims, is there any chance he wouldn't brag about it? Okay.
There is no chance. Like, he would definitely brag about it because it would make him look good. It would make him look
amazing.
Right.
The one guy who helped, that just volunteered out of nowhere and said to the FBI, you know what, I'm not sure about this guy. And maybe he did it for bad reasons. Oh, we had a property fight and he took some of my masseuses and from Mar-a-Lago, whatever. But it doesn't matter. If he did the right thing out of nowhere and volunteered, he should get an enormous amount of credit. I've never known Donald Trump not to want to get the credit that he deserves. So that's why the alternate explanation of he's desperately trying to hide that he was an FBI informant is because of why he was an informant.
Oh my God, my mind is like blown right now because there's more to this story, as you can imagine, right? So look, the DOJ is fighting very hard to cover certain things up that don't need to be covered up. So I'll give you an example. There's an NBC News exclusive, you can read for yourselves. It's titled DOJ names of 2 associates Epstein wired $100,000 and $250,000 should stay secret. That's what the DOJ says, right? The Justice Department request came after NBC News asked a federal judge to unseal the names of 2 people Epstein paid and helped protect from prosecution. So NBC News has requested that this, federal judge essentially overseeing the Epstein case unseal those 2 names. Who did Jeffrey Epstein send $100,000 to and $250,000 to back in 2018 as that case was being revisited? That sweetheart deal that he received in 2008 was being revisited. So the first associate received a payment of $100,000 from Epstein and the second associate received a payment of $250,000, both in 2018. Days after the Miami Herald began publishing a series of investigative stories where victims criticized a plea deal he received in Florida in 2008. Now, as part of that plea agreement, Epstein secured a statement from federal prosecutors in Florida that the 2 individuals would not be prosecuted. Now, by the way, like, gross. Why? Why would anyone agree to that? But prosecutors wrote that on November 30th, 2018, Epstein wired $100,000 from a trust account he controlled to an individual named as redacted, a potential co-conspirator, and for whom Epstein obtained protection in the NPA. So prosecutors also wrote that this individual was also named and featured prominently in the Miami Herald series. There's more. Prosecutors added that the same records show that just 3 days later, on or about December 3rd, 2018, the defendant wired $250,000 from the same trust account to redacted, this is the second individual, who was also named as a potential co-conspirator and for whom Epstein also obtained protection in the NPA. So clearly Epstein was attempting to influence possible witnesses or co-conspirators, because like, why else would you send such a large sum of money to these 2 different individuals? And last month, NBC News sent a letter asking the US District Judge Richard Berman to unseal the redacted names, arguing that, look, Epstein's dead, okay? Criminal proceedings in this case have ended. The DOJ has made clear last summer in July that there would be no additional charges filed against uncharged third parties. So let us have the names. What's the problem with the names? And Trump's Justice Department is fighting tooth and nail to prevent the release of those 2 redacted names.
Yeah, so when I first saw the story, I thought, maybe they were victims and he's doing hush money. But then once you read it, no, it's super clear. They're co-conspirators and they would have been charged along with him. So they're the guilty, right? And he gets the money and he says, please don't prosecute them. And for some ludicrous reason, our government agrees, okay? And remember, at that point, Epstein got the lightest sentence anybody's ever gotten. He can go in and out of jail. It was basically a hotel for him.
That was in 2008.
2008. So that's when he says, okay, don't prosecute these guys. and sends them the money, okay? So, but when NBC News is asking for it, Epstein's already dead, so he has no rights anymore. And the government has said there will be no further prosecutions. So NBC is rightly saying, and by the way, great job by NBC News here, saying, hey, then there's no reason legally to hold those names from the public.
Right.
So then the Department of Justice jumps in and goes, no, don't tell anybody about those names. Now, if you were trying to protect the victims, that's super weird. If you're trying to protect the guilty, that makes sense. This is the 800th piece of evidence in a row that our government is trying to protect the guilty.
Yeah. So individuals 1 and 2, according to the DOJ, basically objected to the unsealing of their names and personal identifying information in the July 2019 letter. They're arguing, the DOJ is essentially arguing that the privacy of these alleged co-conspirators is more important than the public interest in revealing the 2 possible co-conspirators to Jeffrey Epstein's predatory crimes.
Look, this has ironically made me more sure that it's an intelligence agency issue. Why? Because if it turns out Trump is actually implicated and that's why he became an informant, etc., well, then you could say, well, maybe it isn't an intelligence agency thing. It's just there were a lot of significant Democrats implicated, and obviously Trump being implicated, and that's why Democrats and Republicans won't release it. But then I think, really? I mean, if the Democrats knew that Trump is an FBI informant, which now it looks like there's a pretty healthy chance that that's true, right? And if you're in charge of the government, Biden was certainly, let alone Obama, etc., you know you have access to those files. And they didn't use that against Trump. They used everything else in the world, but they didn't use that. The one thing that could actually sink him. That means that is thermonuclear. No one is allowed to touch that under any circumstance.
That's why we haven't seen the files yet.
Yeah.
And by the way, one final thing I just want to mention before we forget. Remember, the Wall Street Journal had published that piece in regard to a birthday letter that Donald Trump had drawn for Jeffrey Epstein. Well, the Wall Street Journal has just published that image. It has the silhouette of, I guess, a woman. I don't know, with the exact text or wording that had been referred to in the Wall Street Journal piece. So there it is.
Yeah, that doesn't add much, honestly, because we already knew Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were terrific friends because both Trump and Epstein said it. It was for 15 years at a minimum. We know that they sent crude messages back and forth to one another, said crude things. The only question is whether Trump also did those things. There's allusions to that in that, but with Epstein, everybody apparently knew. That's why almost everybody on the birthday card's like, yeah, we know you like to sleep with a lot of women and blackmail people, and you like girls as super young, And you're like, Jesus Christ, man, didn't it bother any of you? I
think it's telling that Ghislaine Maxwell ensured that, like, for Jeffrey Epstein's birthdays, all of these rich, powerful people who had connections to Epstein, like, put their, happy birthdays in writing, and that these books were kept. Like,
guys, I'll tell you what the rebuttable presumption is. I can't tell you that I know for a fact things that are in the, in the vaults of our government, if not already destroyed, right? But you can get to logical conclusions that are way more likely than the opposite, okay? So you're telling me that there's video cameras in the rooms recording the massages. So there is absolutely no reason to put cameras in there other than blackmail. So then the question is it an intelligence agency doing the blackmail in a sophisticated operation targeting the most powerful people in the world, or 2 randos? Just 2, just Epstein and Maxwell. And one of the randos happens to be the daughter of the biggest Mossad agent in Israel's history, the one that stole America's nuclear secrets and did like 8 other things and got a huge state funeral in Israel because he's a legendary Mossad agent.
Robert Maxwell.
So it's 2 random people that are not in the part of intelligence agencies, and one of those random people happens to be the daughter of a legendary spy from any country. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you what's more likely and what's less likely. If you haven't pieced it together, it is very, very likely to be an intelligence agency, very likely from a certain country. And so they cover it up because we cover up everything for that country.
Yeah. All right, well, we got to take a break. When we come back, Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene joins us to tell us what she is planning to do in response to this, in my opinion, very clear Jeffrey Epstein files cover up. Can't wait for that conversation. Stick around, we'll be right back.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was mad.
Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this?
The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And Phil and host beat CNN and headline news combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
And they want him off the air.
Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Magic. It's showtime. And say 45 minutes. I'm hosting today. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jerry, your face is already perfect, but you know what? I still need to apply some makeup. I went through this process, right, a few years ago, when I realized that I was gonna have to wear makeup on the show. I had to go through, like, finding out what my undertones were. You guys know what those are? I got my MAC Cosmetics. It says SPF 15 foundation, broad spectrum. But apparently, what I have is red undertones, and I think pores are not supposed to be seen. I need all these things to be confirmed for me. These sponge things don't work for me. You gotta use your hands. This idea. That's how the magic really happens. So we're gonna go through a tutorial how to make the magic happen from beautiful to beautifuler. Let's go. I've already been moisturized. That's the first thing. But moisturization already happened. We go raw. All hands. Pick up. Couple streaks. This is the guy way of putting on makeup. We got dots. There's some shiny points that generally happen. First of all, here we go. You dust here. I'm putting way too much, but you dust. Oh, get the excess off. You don't want chunky powder. There's like a T-zone, I think, right? Mine is a double T-zone. Because I went middle and another cross. Make sure your nose isn't all shiny. People get on you for it. You know, say, that's not a good point you made on there, JR. Your nose is shiny. You guys are picky like that sometimes. I think that's about it, fellas and ladies. See you guys next time. Bitsies.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk Uygur and Ana Kasparian with you guys. Also now joining us, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman from Georgia's 14th Congressional District. Representative Greene, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on tonight.
No problem. I understand you have big news for us. There is something you are considering introducing tomorrow. What is that?
Well, actually, I've already introduced them. This week here in Congress, we're doing the National Defense Authorization Act, which is our annual funding for our military. And our military budget should be very focused on our country, on our military, and strictly for defense purposes. However, once again, there is funding for foreign countries, foreign causes, foreign aid, and foreign defense of foreign nations. And so I've introduced multiple amendments to strip that funding out, specifically to defund $600 million for Ukraine. So I've got one amendment to do that. And then I have a second amendment to take out any funding because I found out that one of my colleagues is trying to add more money in for Ukraine. I have two amendments that strip funding from Israel. This would be $500 million. Israel already receives $3.8 billion annually from the United States government. I'm a big believer in defunding all foreign aid and all foreign funding for all foreign countries. So I've introduced two amendments, one to get the $500 million out of the NDAA. The $3.8 billion goes in the state and foreign ops appropriations bill, so that's separately. And I had done amendments for that. And then I have another amendment that takes out another $105 million. This one is $55 million for Israel's counter-drone program and another $70 million for anti-tunnel cooperation. So it's just important. We're $37 trillion in debt. We shouldn't be funding foreign countries, basically because America's broke, and we really need to get focused on our own country and our own people's problems.
Okay, so I want to take it one by one. I want to get clarity on all this, and then we'll get into the content and substance of it. So first off, the $500 million that you introduced an amendment to take out of the NDAA, is that the one that recently passed overwhelmingly in the House?
Yes, that's the one that overwhelmingly passed. It was before Congress went on recess, and only 6 members of Congress voted for it, yes.
And so that they claim is for defensive purposes, whatever that means, and about 60 million of billion of it or so, million of it goes to around 66 maybe to Iron Dome, and the rest is for, I don't know if you know, vague defensive purposes.
Well, just to clarify for your listeners, the US already provides nuclear-armed Israel with $3.8 billion annually in foreign aid. In 2024, in the security supplemental, we gave $8.7 billion to Israel. During the recent 12-day war with Iran in June, the US used 15 to 20% of our terminal high altitude area defense missile stockpile defending Israel. That cost the United States somewhere over $800 million. Wow. The $500 million that I'm introducing an amendment to take out is authorized in the NDAA for this program that funds Israel's missile defense systems, Iron Dome, David Sling, and the Arrow system. But it's important to note that since 2006, we've spent over $15 billion supporting these Israeli missile defense systems. Here's what is something important to understand. While we're 37 trillion in debt, Israel is less than 400 billion in debt. And they're doing so well with their economy. They're able to provide state-funded healthcare for Israeli citizens. They're able to provide state-funded college. My argument is it's not anti-Semitic to say that America should keep our money and invest our own hard-earned tax dollars in our own interest, especially for a country like Israel that is nuclear armed and that is doing so well economically, they're able to provide state-funded healthcare and college. I don't think that's a country that needs our assistance, especially how they've shown the entire world that they're very capable of annihilating and wiping out their enemies. So that's really my argument there with Israel.
Right.
And primarily my argument is we've got so many problems here at home. I really want to see the United States Congress focus on the American people.
So one more quick point of clarification. And the Second Amendment is to take out the entire 3.8 billion in funding?
Well, the 3.8 billion is not in the NDAA. That's in a separate appropriations bill. So I wasn't able to do that one here.
Right.
Oh, so you couldn't do that here. So the two amendments are for the 500 million and the 125 million.
And just to be clear, the 3.8 billion that we provide Israel every single year is part of legislation that passed under the Obama administration, a 10-year program, which is set to expire in 2026. So that fight is coming up because I'm sure Israel is going to expect our Congress to re-up and potentially increase the amount of money they can expect from American taxpayers on a yearly basis. So, I think what you're doing here is so important, Congresswoman Greene. So please, thank you, because I know that you now have a target on your back, and I'm sure you're being called all sorts of ridiculous names because you want to, prioritize the American people and do something about our debt. What's really interesting, though, is when it comes to the military aid that's provided to Ukraine, President Donald Trump has very subtly, but I actually think this is a smart idea, has very subtly kind of started to shift the financial burden a little more over to Europe. So the American taxpayer isn't as responsible for essentially helping Ukraine in their defense. In the case of Israel, though, what's really interesting is on top of that 3.8 billion that they receive every single year, you have presidents, and Biden certainly did this literally over 100 times during his administration. He just went, he bypassed Congress altogether to provide Israel with tens of billions of dollars in additional military support and military funding. And Trump has done similar things during the short stint he's had in his second term. And I want to kind of understand, what have you as a congresswoman experienced kind of like behind the scenes? Like, what is it about Israel in particular that gets our lawmakers to just be unwavering in their support and their willingness to shell out endless amounts of money to that country?
I think that's a great question, and it's really difficult to understand. So I don't go on the AIPAC trips. I've never been on them. I don't receive their funding, and I have a sign on my office door, literally, that reminds people, if you're coming in my office, it reminds them, if you're coming in for a foreign country, you've got to be registered under FARA. And I think that's extremely important. I don't understand it, Anna, because I serve in the United States House of Representatives, and I believe my job title as a representative is for my district, which is the American people. And as a whole, the body of Congress, we represent the American people and our country and our government and our causes, and we're supposed to work towards solving our problems. However, there is no country all over the world that gets the attention, the funding, the dedication, the amount of votes, legislation, resolutions other than Israel. As a matter of fact, we've voted, I think it's over 21 to 23 resolutions denouncing anti-Semitism, denouncing anything happening towards Jewish people since I've been a member of Congress, January of 2021. And I've never seen resolutions for any other cause like that in that number. As well as when it comes to Israel, we have hate crimes, which is incredibly important. We need hate crimes. People of all backgrounds, races, no matter what their identity is, they should be protected. However, in our NDAA, there's a portion there where they're introducing more penalties for anti-Semitism when it comes to college campuses and protesting. I'm completely against that. So I'm not sure how to answer your question of why. Part of it is there's Christians in America that really believe that verse in Genesis, bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And they believe that applies today to the secular government of Israel. I personally don't believe that, and I'm a Christian. And I believe that's basically a pretty big stumbling stone. If you're a Christian, you truly believe that Jesus died on a cross and rose 3 days later and ascended into heaven. And we have very deep convictions on what that meant. That meant that he died for all of our sins to be forgiven. We don't believe in that verse in Genesis, meaning that covers up everything that Jesus did. But I think that holds a lot of power over many of my colleagues and a certain percentage of Americans today. But I think the separation of understanding that being against what the secular government, nuclear armed government of Israel is doing, it doesn't make you an anti-Semitic person. It doesn't make you against Jewish people. It just means that, and for me, it means that I believe our problems are so big in America and our debt is so massive that I'm sorry to the rest of the world, no offense to anyone, but I think we just really got to focus at home.
You know, my follow-up to you is more philosophical than policy related, because I don't think I'm mistaken in noticing a change in you, to be quite frank, and it's a change that I personally like. There's a certain seriousness and maturity in the way that you deliver what your objectives are and how you genuinely want to serve what's in the best interests of your constituents and the people of this country. Do you feel that, the way that this genocide in Gaza has developed has kind of given you a different perspective on geopolitics?
Well, I think there's two parts to that question, and I appreciate your observation. In the beginning, the media was pretty rough on me. Right. So it was hard for a lot of people to really understand who I am as a person. And when I ran for Congress in 2020, what a lot of people may not know is I actually ran criticizing the Republican Party. I had a lot of criticism of Republicans. And I said that many times on my campaign trail, so my district knows it full well. That is no surprise to them. I think the Republican Party fails in many ways. And I'm open about that. Now, when it comes to what's happening in Gaza, there's videos and pictures of what's happening to children that you just can't unsee. Mm-hmm. And anyone that has a heart and compassion for children and innocent people, I don't know how anyone can turn a blind eye to that. But I've also stated that October 7th was horrific, and I stand by those statements. I think both things are really bad. And then I talked to Christian pastors in Gaza, and they told me that the starvation of children is real. This is not war propaganda. This is not made up. And so it was taking some investigation and talking to people and looking deeply into actual evidence I'm seeing with videos and pictures. And, I just can't unsee it. I think it's terrible. And that war, it really, truly needs to end. There's a certain authenticity in the way you're reacting to it that I really value, because you look at so many politicians, and even in the face of mass atrocities, they're just robots. And so I really appreciate the fact that you've been speaking out against what's happening in Gaza. I'm sure that it has attracted all sorts of terrible attention toward you, but please keep doing what you're doing, because it's necessary. And I think that what's currently happening, because we're paying for it, we're aiding and abetting it. It's a stain. It's a stain on our country, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. So I just want to follow up on that real quick. So Representative Greene, your reaction that Anna just described, a human reaction to seeing children, being killed right in front of our eyes, and not a little bit, like tens of thousands of children, right, is a normal human reaction. But yet it is not the reaction that an overwhelming majority of your colleagues are feeling, apparently. So that, what did you guys get? 6 votes last time for similar legislation, right? And so now the media tells us that when you look at why, that it's because Israel is apparently some special magical place and that we owe them. I don't know why we owe them, but we're told all the time we owe them, right? And so I don't know that America ever did anything wrong to Israel. All America's ever done is support Israel over and over and over and over again. And even in the middle of a genocide, but still apparently we owe them. And it's offensive to suggest that we don't owe them. But yet again, the overwhelming majority of our colleagues say, no, we do owe Israel, and you are not allowed to criticize, you're not allowed to question their money. And so you've gotten attacked, and Ro Khanna's gotten attacked, Tom Massey, etc. So real quick, I wanna run down the possibilities. Media says money has nothing to do with it, though a lot of Americans think money has a lot to do with it. That AIPAC is given to 65% of Congress. The different Israel PAC supporting Israel have given to 90% of the members of Congress. So do you believe money is a factor in your colleagues' votes on this issue?
I completely believe money's a factor. I watch it every single day here in Congress. The people that I work with, who they're funded by, affects their votes. Many of the doctors caucus during COVID, the doctors, many of them I served with on the COVID committee, they're very, very funded by Big Pharma. And they wouldn't talk about the COVID vaccines. And that was so disturbing to me. I think that's a very important topic and investigation that needs to happen. And I'm pursuing it right now as we speak. Many of the members that I serve with that are highly funded by the military industrial complex, they're going to make sure that those government contracts and all of that gets funded. They believe in a war economy, and they will flat out tell us that they'll say, Marjorie, you have thousands of jobs in your district that rely on these government contracts. Well, you wanna know something? I'm not very interested in funding an economy that's based on killing people, especially innocent people and children.
I love it.
And but yes, I do believe that AIPAC funding is very serious. I believe AIPAC needs to register under FARA. I've openly demanded that, and if we had a Department of Justice that was doing its job, they would be investigating AIPAC, because I don't know of any other foreign country that literally takes our members of Congress on a trip to their own country, takes along with them influencers from all different backgrounds, news people, and spends a lot of money, all expenses paid, with everybody from the prime minister to different members of the government, and taking them on all types of sightseeing, religious places of worship, dinners, and all types of excursions. I don't know any other country that does that other than Israel. And I do think that it's powerful. It has an impact. And my position is, I don't hate Israel. I don't hate the people there. Oh my goodness, I wish them all well. I wish people all over the world well. But my position is, we are in trouble at home. We're in big trouble, and our debt is serious. And the fact that my children's generation, who are in their 20s, everyone they know can't afford rent, their credit cards are maxed out, the cost of living is too expensive, and insurance is a scam, and our healthcare industry is a disaster. And this is all going to lead to somewhere. And I'm just unapologetically fed up with it all.
Okay, so I know you got to run to votes. I'd love to talk more about Ukraine, more about other issues. But one last question about this. How much of a factor do you think it is that members of Congress know that if they oppose Israeli funding, that mainstream media will come down on them like a ton of bricks? That they'll be accused of being anti-Semites, that their career will be threatened, etc.
Oh yeah, big time. It's ridiculous. So you've got everybody from Mark Levine to Ben Shapiro to Laura Loomer. You've got the establishment media will call you an anti-Semite. Newspapers, you'll get phone calls from all kinds of people, asking, what's the matter with you? Yeah, the pressure is real, but I think the American people see through it, and the tide is rapidly changing. And I tell you, one of the most delightful experiences I've had since I've been in Washington, and it reminds me of my years before I ever became a member of Congress, is that I'm finding common ground with people on the left and the right that really want to focus in on America. And I think that's the best thing that can happen. And that's why I'm delighted to have conversations with the two of you. And I look forward to finding more common ground, because I think that could be the best thing that could happen for all of us.
100%. We still have so many things we disagree on, but more and more these days, it's becoming less about left versus right than it is about the American people versus the elites and the establishment.
Absolutely.
Because they do not serve our interest at all, and everyone is tired of it. So Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, we appreciate you coming on the Young Turks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, there are more interesting developments from the right. Now, Tucker's got a documentary on 9/11. He got interviewed about it. That's super interesting. And a lot more developments about JP Morgan covering up for Jeffrey Epstein. That's super interesting as well. So stay right here. We'll be right back. All right, that was interesting.
That was great. That was great.
Yeah, and so things we did not expect, but you know the old story about Pandora's box. They open up Pandora's box, and all sorts of evils and ghouls and goblins fly out, cause nothing but trouble. But at the very bottom of the box is hope. So I think we've almost gone through the entire Pandora's box. That's why I'm beginning to see hope as a light at the end of the tunnel. And is that hope take the form of Marjorie Taylor Greene? No, it takes a form of real Americans getting together and going, I'm not sure that either side's really representing us.
Yeah.
I think that this is a big problem that almost no one in power actually represents us. And that awakening, that is hope.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. So Eclectic, I'm reading these blind. Eclectic wrote in, hi all, my guess is that Marjorie Taylor Greene's major announcement is that after all these years of secretly watching TDR, she's officially leaving MAGA and becoming a member of the Dragon Squad.
Could you imagine?
Okay, next time. Okay, but that's a fun prediction.
Georgia Dragon.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay.
I know that John's about to chase me down.
Yeah. Gonna have trouble here. Anyway, Navinex says Anna Strawberryan. Okay, that's funny.
Because of the red.
Yeah, I wanted to lighten it up. So Corporate Media Sucks wrote in, and this is real organic, so I'm gonna read it to you guys. They say, I called Chapter about getting a new Medicare supplement plan, which you can do at any time of the year. So Chapter is our sponsor, I've been telling you guys about it, but this is an actual member who tried it. So I shouldn't read this blind, but here we go. I thought you had to wait until open enrollment, they said. Not only did they save me $743 per year. Yes.
Oh, thank God.
I know, right?
I'm like, oh no, brace for impact.
I was able to end my association with the most evil Medicare supplement provider, which also makes you buy a yearly membership to a national retiree group I wasn't interested in being in anyway. Thank God. See, guys, that's what I love. I love when we do our little bit of research, find you the right sponsor, and it's not easy, and we turn down a lot of sponsors, and then they deliver for you. Thank God. So here, let's tell you about Chapter real quick. Wasn't meant to be an ad, but askchapter.org/TYT. In fact, I don't have their ad for me. Oh, you could use this phone number if you want to write it down. 805-201-2275. 805-201-2275. And askchapter.org/TYT. All right, anyway, thank you for writing in. That's amazing, we appreciate it. And I love that it worked for you. I love that it got you good results. It makes me feel great. Art Guy says, the only way to get to the bottom of this is to send known CIA agent John Idarola. Okay, reading randomly here. Eclectic writes back in, I very much dislike MTG. But she is correct on several issues, including Israel and Epstein. She's standing up and defying Trump. She also has the cojones to come on TYT. Why won't AOC come on TYT? Why did she bow down to Biden even when it was blatantly obvious he was unfit to serve? I'm shocked to say this, but AOC needs to be more like MTG. So look, that's his opinion, but back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also ready for next chapter. They joined on tyt.com/join, so they're awesome and we appreciate you so much. And on YouTube, David Baldessaro joined. We appreciate you. They hit that big, beautiful join button.
Great. So did,
yeah, that is a badass. Nice. It's also a Baldassaro.
Okay,
let's
drop it.
All right, good old Goldie also joined, and so did Zeldrian, and they wrote in, I just became a member, but I've been watching since October 7th happened. Soon enough, there'll be 3 generations of my family watching you guys. Love you guys, you are punk rock.
Oh, okay. I like that.
I appreciate that a lot. So look, when I said that Marjorie Taylor Greene was going to come on the show today, some in social media said, oh, why don't you have Democratic representatives?
We'd be happy to.
Yeah, we invite them all the time, guys. We had Representative Delia Ramirez on recently. That was great. Check that out on YouTube. Ro Khanna obviously comes on all the time. And you'll see Greg Kassar and some others do it. But if you're seeing someone not on here, it's probably because they said no. And that is weird and curious when Marjorie Taylor Greene and others are saying yes.
Yeah, we reach out to members of Congress all the time, obviously Democratic members of Congress. So yeah, anyway, but I really appreciated that interview. And guys, I've gotten a little taste of what happens to you in your personal life when you're willing to speak out against, the unwavering support for Israel. And so I have a tremendous amount of respect for any member of Congress who is speaking out the way Marjorie Taylor Greene is speaking out. Whether they're Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. It's a difficult thing to do. You attract a lot of hatred, a lot of threats. So to see her doing it anyway shows a level of strength that we need in members of Congress. All right, now let's move on to something entirely different because there's an interesting docuseries coming out from Tucker Carlson's network.
The official story on 9/11 is a complete lie. The 9/11 report is a joke.
You have the CIA following 2 men all over the planet and then eventually even to America, right? And you don't tell the FBI. 9/11 Commission, the cover-up.
So what did happen? What did the government know? What did foreign governments know? There was a cover-up. Why? It's been nearly 25 years. It is time Americans learned what actually happened. We're going to tell you, we're releasing 1 episode per week. You're not going to want to wait. If you're a member, you don't have to. You get all 5 episodes the day it drops, right then, ad-free. Our first episode airs Thursday, 9/11, September 11th. You will not want to miss it. Join us now at tuckercarlson.com.
All right, well, that trailer and this docuseries that's coming up on the Tucker Carlson network is getting a lot of attention. So much so that Piers Morgan interviewed him today just to ask some questions and to challenge what many believe are simply crazy conspiracy theories among conspiracy theorists in regard to what took place on 9/11. I don't know what I personally believe. Obviously, this hasn't been published yet, but I thought that this conversation, this exchange between Piers Morgan and Tucker Carlson was fascinating. And we're gonna just give you a few highlights. Please watch the entire conversation for yourselves. But before I get into it, Cenk, any initial thoughts?
Well, before I never entertained the idea that 9/11 was anything but what the government said. And so I was like, what did they make the planes disappear? They get willing to kill everybody on the planes. It all sounds absurd. So I now think that I have seen the government do so many terrible things repeatedly and cover up for it repeatedly that I am no longer sure. And when you see things like World Trade Center 7, a building across the street, apparently was so hot that the steel inside the building melted from across the street, but the government found Mohammed Atta's paper passport conveniently on top of the rubble.
Yeah, there's
things that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I know the answer, but I'm beginning to come to some conclusions about what is not the answer.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at as well, right? I'm not running around saying 9/11 was an inside job. I don't know, but I do know that there are some serious issues with what the, accepted narrative is. And in fact, they're about to get into an exchange in regard to Building 7. So let's go to the first clip.
Huge parts of the 9/11 story were left out of the commission report. For example, what happened to Building 7, which was not only not next to the Twin Towers, which were hit by airplanes, but had a building in between itself and those buildings, collapsed that afternoon for reasons that no one has been able to explain since. You're not a lunatic for asking. There's no plausible explanation for how that building collapsed.
So that's the issue at play here, that I wanted to give you that portion of what Tucker Carlson had to say. And Piers Morgan attempts to explain it to some extent by providing what he feels is a similar example of another building, like just melting away similarly to Building 7. Yeah.
Before we go to that clip, Anna, I just want to say this story broke today. I didn't know that was going to be the first topic. And for all the times that I had this conversation with Ben and a million other people, I would always say, look guys, I get everything and I'm not a physicist. I don't know how the plane could hit or couldn't hit or could crash or couldn't crash. I got no expertise on that. Just that building that is not anywhere near the other buildings just melting down. I've never thought that made any sense. And what we should expect from our government is logical answers.
Right.
Not like, whatever, shut up, you're a conspiracy theorist and you should never get any real answers. So the reason I interrupted you is because I'm super curious what Piers Morgan is gonna say, because I've literally never heard a proper explanation for it, even when I believe 9/11 100%.
Well, let's go
the
to
official
Piers Morgan.
story.
Let's see what he had to say.
If you look into the investigation into Tower 7, the findings of the investigation into it were that the North Tower, when it came down, had set off a load of fires in Building 7. And it was a steel structure and shouldn't have gone down, but it did. That these fires burned all afternoon, and I think it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something, the tower eventually gave way to the welter of fires raging inside it. And it was the only time that had happened to a structure that was built in that way. However, there has been another tower very similar to that in structure, which has since gone down in Tehran. So it's no longer the only one. In other words, there is another example of a tower like that collapsing.
Okay, so you can see Tucker Carlson smiling in response to what Piers Morgan is saying, probably because, okay, well, if you want to make that argument that the fire was so hot that it led to the collapse of Building 7, well, what happened to the building in between, right? And nothing happened to that building. And so I want to give Tucker an opportunity to respond to that, and then we can discuss.
What is the alternative explanation? I mean, if you're examining another theory other than the one that the investigation concluded was simply that the North Tower came down, fires were set off in Tower 7, and then it eventually collapsed, what is the other theory which we should give more credence to?
I don't know. I don't know that the onus is on me or anyone who seeks the truth about what happened to come up with an alternative theory. The onus is on federal authorities to explain why, for example, they never investigated it. Why, for example, the rubble and the steel from that building was carted off within hours and sent out of the country to Asia. Why, for example, an analysis done not by kooks, but by chemists found traces of explosive material in the dust from that day. Why structural engineers who have kind of no skin in this game came to the conclusion that that just couldn't happen based on all available evidence. And that none of that is addressed at all or even mentioned in the 9/11 report. So, and there are all kinds of anomalies, as I know that you're fully aware, and there are possible explanations to explain all of them. For example, the BBC report on air saying the building had fallen when it hadn't fallen yet.
He's right about that BBC report, and Pierce later says that the BBC report was based on an erroneous report by Reuters. Okay.
Okay, that doesn't explain anything. Then how did Reuters know the building was going to collapse before it got hit?
Exactly. Yeah.
So look, I don't know those details.
We don't know.
Okay.
And like I'm very interested to watch this docuseries and the claims that it makes. I was super young when 9/11 happened. I was in high school. And the thought of, this being a big conspiracy was ridiculous to me. It didn't even cross my mind. I was a child, okay? But revisiting this now, I do have a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, it's over. Look, we're at a seminal moment in American politics and media. Before, there was a whole bucket of things you could not question. The minute you question them, what would happen? Wow, well, what does that mean you can't question them? You can say anything you want in a backyard barbecue, right? But if you work in politics or media in any way, shape, or form, if you question them, you would immediately be fired. You would be labeled a kook, a conspiracy theorist, and probably some sort of character assassination on top attached to it.
Right.
Anti-Semite, a racist, a this, a that, whatever it is, but you're dispatched. You're not allowed on air, right? Now, because of digital media, they can't contain it. And now everybody's asking questions and they're like, fire Tim Dillon. Damn it, we can't fire Tim Dillon. Okay, then fire Joe Rogan. God damn it, we can't fire Joe Rogan. So now people are starting to ask and ask and ask. And so what I'm telling you now about this seminal moment is we've crossed the Rubicon. You can ask any goddamn thing you like.
Right.
Okay. And if they try to fire you for it, they're the bad guys, not you.
And
okay?
asking the question doesn't mean that you already think that it's a conspiracy. You're just trying to prove that it's a conspiracy. The questions about Building 7 are legitimate questions. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, look, I'm willing to get convinced on anything. But Building 7 is a mystery that is nearly impossible. Like the idea that the towers would collapse themselves, north and south, after they got hit, that the steel could burn so much that they could collapse is a very controversial idea within engineering circles, right? But but a building across the street with other buildings in between, no, the steel didn't burn down. No way. That is not the correct answer. So the same thing with JFK. So if when I was growing up, if you ever said anything about JFK, you were told to shut up and you'd get fired, etc. Now, I don't know who killed JFK because I don't have the secret files in front of me. I don't know what happened on 9/11, but it's not my job to know, it's my job to ask questions, right? And it's the job of the government to tell us the correct answers. So what I'm telling you now is, on JFK, I'm absolutely positive the government story is not the correct answer. Lee Harvey Oswald didn't shoot him from 3 states away and hit everything else in between and is the greatest shot of all time, even though he had nothing to do with JFK. There's tons and tons of people who despise JFK and wanted him killed and said on the record they wanted him killed. So I don't know which one of them did it. I do know that it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald acting by himself. And if you want to do the old games and say, well, the government said it, so you're a conspiracy theorist. You can do that all day long, guys, but it doesn't matter because you lost. Because now you look ridiculous. So now when you turn back to 9/11, no, I don't know the answer, guys. I don't know who did it and why they did it, or maybe it did happen just like October 7th, where it's not that Israel did it, but there was a weird stand down order. Why was there a stand down order? And that's not me saying, that's IDF soldiers saying there was a stand down order right at that exact time when we never have a stand down order. So that's not me saying Israel did it, that's me saying that's weird.
That is weird,
right?
And we need an answer to that.
Yeah, and you need a plausible answer to that, not trust me, bro, which is what the government's been doing the entire time. And then one more quick thing on Pierce's answer. So now we're told that conveniently, there was a building that melted down in a similar way in Tehran. Wait, does Iran acknowledge that? Or is that some intelligence we got from a trusted ally? And just trust us, bro, that building went down just like World Trade Center 7 did. Yeah, maybe and maybe not.
Should we play a few more clips?
Yeah.
Okay, so the topic then switched to whether anyone may have known that this terror attack was gonna happen, but withheld that information or that intel from the American people and the American government anyway. Let's get to that clip.
Is it cock up, or do you think there is merit to suggestion that some people somewhere must have known more than we've been told?
Well, we know that people did know more than we've been told. I mean, somebody shorted the airlines and a bunch of the banks that were affected. Now, this is not a conspiracy theory. It's not a guess. This is publicly available information. Now, the FBI found out the identity of the person or institution that shorted these events on 9/11 and made a huge amount of money by doing that, but never released that information. So why can't we know who clearly had foreknowledge? I mean, if you're shorting American Airlines a week before 9/11 when no one knows it's coming, I think you should have to explain why you did that. And if you're shorting Barclays and banks that were affected by 9/11, why can't we know who you are? These are public markets, by the way. This is not private equity. This is publicly traded equities.
That's fascinating. I mean, there could be an explanation for why that individual decided to short American Airlines. It could have been a crazy coincidence.
Yeah. So look, again, the problem isn't the answers. The problem is that we weren't allowed to ask before. Right. So for example, is it possible that somebody had a different hunch based on a completely different thing and they shorted American and they got quote unquote lucky, right? In that sense. Now you could say that with rolling your eyes, oh yeah, what a coincidence. But it might be, it might be, right? It depends on the scale of it. It depends on who it is. Is it Rando Bob from Nebraska? Well, how the hell would he know, right? But if it's somebody from the intelligence community, whoa, wait, that's a different thing, right? If it's a senator, that's a different thing, right? So why aren't the American people allowed to know? I mean, you don't even have to give me the brother's name, whether it was the guy who shorted Barclays or the company that did, or American or whatever. Just like, can we find out what category they were in? Were they a farmer? Were they a banker? What were they, right? But for everything, they always tell you the same thing. Shut up, otherwise we'll ruin you. You will assassinate your character and say you're a conspiracy theorist and you'll never work again. That reaction makes me think, wait, maybe this is worse than I thought. Because what a weirdo reaction for the most normal questions about one of the most important events in American history.
It is one of the most important and most tragic events in American history. It was the largest terror attack on US soil. Okay, thousands of people died, and it served as the catalyst for changing this country forever. And not for the best, I would argue, okay? Violations of Americans' privacies, mass surveillance, the Patriot Act, obviously, foreign wars, it just goes on.
Global war on terrorism that cost us $8 trillion.
Yes.
Happened to take out other people's enemies, not our enemies. Anyways, but one other thing, the Bin Ladens. So why did we fly out the Bin Ladens? No one's ever answered that.
That's a great question.
So that was a question from the left. That was Michael Moore asking that question. What a weird reaction. You're telling me Osama bin Laden did it, and your first reaction was to gather up all the Bin Ladens that apparently lived inside America and fly them out first class to Saudi Arabia.
Why?
And I'm not allowed to ask why? No, that's crazy talk. Guys, this isn't about right or left. This is about our government doesn't represent us, and they keep telling us funny stories that don't make any sense. The minute you ask one question, they try to take your head off.
Yeah.
So you got one more?
One more clip. Let's take a look.
So clearly, yes, there was foreknowledge. By the way, there was a team, this is according to the FBI, by the way, this is the FBI saying, there was a team of clearly intel-connected foreigners who were arrested after 9/11, as you well know, videotaping the terror attacks. I'm almost verbatim quoting from the FBI assessment of this. And the FBI determined that they apparently had foreknowledge of the attacks. So why can't we know more about that? Exactly, shut up, that's bigoted. No, this is my country.
So I don't know if he's referring to the 5 Israelis who a witness had seen taking photos, not recording, but taking photos of the World Trade Center as it was being attacked. One of them was holding a lighter up to the World Trade Center prior to the attack. And I don't know if that's what he's referring to, but those 5 individuals were kept in US custody for over 2 months. The FBI absolutely did believe that at least 2 of them had connections to Mossad, right? The Israeli intelligence organization. And I read the FBI files on this, and the investigation just like abruptly kind of ended after a little over 2 months. John Ashcroft specifically, the attorney general at the time, called for them to be released and sent back to Israel. And then a few years after that, he served as a consultant who consulted on behalf of Israel.
I mean, it's absurd. So guys, look, on that one, again, that's the one that people get most touchy about because they assume all sorts of things in your head that aren't in your head. They're like, oh, that must mean that you hate Israel and you hate Jews and you hate this. No, hold on, guys. We're not talking about any of that. We're saying, why did they go to document that event? And that's not my words, that's their words. One of them was on Israeli TV afterwards when he was shipped back to Israel, and they said, why did you go? And he slipped up. I assume he slipped up. He said, we went to document the event, which makes you ask, how did you know there was going to be an event? So now you're not supposed to ask that question, otherwise you're gonna get called all sorts of names.
And by the way, there could even be a legitimate explanation for that, right? Maybe they happened to be in New York City at the time doing other spy operations. The claim was that, or the FBI also believed that there were Israeli nationals or members or agents of Mossad here in the United States spying on Arabs. Okay, that's the
on Arabs.
On Arabs, okay.
Okay, that's what they say.
Maybe they just happen to be in New York City.
Is that okay, by the way?
I don't think that's okay, especially if our government and our intelligence organizations don't know about it. But okay, putting that aside for a second, maybe they saw that there was an attack and they went to this specific area to take more images and whatever of the World Trade Center. I don't know. I don't know what the explanation is. But the point is, these questions are okay to ask, especially when the moving company that these 5 Israelis were working for ended up being a total front. And the owner of that moving company immediately scrambled to get back to Israel once the 5 individuals had been arrested. And by the way, in the moving truck, they found foreign passports, $4,700 in cash, all sorts of weird, shady things that make you wonder, make you ask these appropriate questions. And remember, the 5 got arrested after a witness saw them taking the photos of the World Trade Center and also, in her words, celebrating. They looked happy.
Yeah. All right, so guys, last thing on this. Again, it doesn't mean that Israel did it, for example. It could be that they knew about it like on October 7th, but chose not to say anything. It could be that they said something, but we didn't listen to them. Okay, that could also be the case.
Right.
Remember, there was the famous CIA warning to Bush when he was on his Crawford Ranch, and they said Bin Laden determined to attack inside the United States, and Bush said, "You covered your ass, now go home," and ignored it.
Right.
So there could be legitimate things, but if you have a legitimate answer, telling everybody to shut up and calling them bigots is a weird response, right? And then final thought here. Now, no one disputes that they were Israeli spies and that they were released back to Israel, right?
People do dispute it even till this day, but.
Oh, I mean, of course, the Israeli government's gonna lie about everything. So I don't mean illegitimate, ridiculous things like there is no genocide in Gaza, no one got hurt in Gaza. I mean, you could say absurd things, right? But we know there was Israeli spies, ABC News reported it, Fox News reported it at the time, etc. The FBI in its own reports has the Israeli spies, right? And then they send them back to Israel, just like we did with the Bin Laden. Why would you catch spies of any nation, let alone after the worst attack against your country ever, and then let them go? Why would you let them go? Assuming that Israel had absolutely nothing to do with it and no foreknowledge, no nothing, because we don't know that. But you did catch these Israeli spies. They did say they were there to document the event. Maybe they said that later. But it is weird. They were taking pictures of it. You thought to question them for 2 months. That's how freaked out you were by it. And then all of a sudden, you don't just go, oh, okay, I get it was a miscommunication or whatever. You guys didn't do anything wrong. You then say, even though I know you're a spy for a foreign country and you were spying on us here in America, you're free to go. Why are they free to go? Forget 9/11, we caught spies here. Yeah. Why are they free to go? Why were the Bin Ladens free to go? Why were the Israeli spies free to go? That is not an illegitimate question. It doesn't get any more legitimate than that question. And if you can't answer that, the problem isn't in the person asking the question. The problem is in the person that won't give the answer to the American people.
Yeah. All right, well, we got to take a break. When we come back, a stunning new expose by the New York Times in regard to JP Morgan Chase and the financial relationship it continued to have with Jeffrey Epstein, even as allegations started to come out and be public. That and more coming up, don't miss it.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
I'm wearing one of our pieces of merchandise. So the funny thing about the Dragon Squad, and that's what our viewers call themselves. That's the name of the group, but every individual chooses their own name. You might have Cincinnati Dragon. You might have Harry Potter Dragon. We have a Grandma Sunshine Dragon is one of those that I remember. These are people that like to have an element of themselves, their lives, what's significant to them reflected as a part of the community. But the concept of the Dragon Squad is just something I threw away as a joke. I was mocking the Proud Boys, these like right-wing groups that come up with a name for themselves that they think is cool, but it's actually really lame. And I thought, off the top of my head, I can come up with something that's still kind of lame, but much cooler. And so I threw out Dragon Squad, and I just moved on with my life. But everybody liked it, and so they kept it going, and so we've embraced it. And I think again, this was during the period of the pandemic. I think it was sort of nice to have a renewed sense of community, a feeling that you're a part of something when everything seems so chaotic. And as a result of that, we've got independent artists online streaming, making beautiful digital art of dragons. We've got, we've released a number of pieces of merchandise that people love sending us photos of them. And then by the way, for me personally, people send me, like you can probably see in the background, like a knitted dragon someone sent me. There's a dragon book they sent me, dragon board games they send me. People have done like custom ironworks, making dragon bottle openers. Like the fans are super invested in diamond art and things like that. And so it's great that they send this stuff. Sometime we're gonna have to set up a wall of all of it. But yeah, it's definitely brought the community a lot closer together. The fact that we were no longer in this big studio, I felt a lot more personally attached to people. It felt very immediate. And I know that I personally needed the connection.
This earth warming and carbon is actually healthy for us.
Try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well.
Hello. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. We've got a lot more news for you.
I want to talk a little bit about this tiff between Vice President Vance and Rand Paul.
The reason we have trials, though, and we don't automatically assume guilt is, what if we make a mistake and they happen to be people fleeing Venezuela, the Venezuelan dictator? I think probably that, we had the facts correct, we got bad people here. But that's the reason, like off our coast, it isn't our policy just to blow people up. We don't blow up ships entering our waters unless they're, hell-bent on attacking another ship or unless they are resisting with gunfire.
Republican Senator Rand Paul has become even more vocal against the Trump administration's plans to essentially blow up boats that they suspect contain drug cartel members or traffickers in them. And of course, this follows the Trump administration's decision to literally blow up and strike a boat, killing 11 people, which they alleged was a Venezuelan drug boat carrying drug traffickers. Now, over the weekend, JD Vance openly defended the strike on X, posting the following: killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military. But again, the issue here isn't retaliating against drug traffickers. The issue here is there's no clear evidence that this was a drug boat, that these were actually drug traffickers, or that the US was in any sort of imminent danger as a result. And as we all should know, our laws here in the United States do not indicate that the federal government can engage in extrajudicial killings of individuals they merely suspect are trafficking drugs. And the United States can argue that it was taking anticipatory self-defense action, and Trump said Tren de Aragua was under the control of Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro. However, that does fall short of international law without evidence of an imminent attack or past attacks by Tren de Aragua, according to legal experts. But when JD Vance was confronted with the facts, well, he doubled down, and he doubled down pretty aggressively, saying the quiet part out loud. So in response to JD Vance, Brian Krasenstein said, killing the citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime. At that point, JD Vance responded with, I don't give a crap, using a different word, what you call it. So basically, war crime, schmore crime, who cares? We're gonna do what we want. And did JD Vance just admit that this was a war crime? It seems like that's the case. Now, Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul actually took some time to call JD Vance out on these posts, writing on X, JD, I don't give a crap Vance says killing people he accuses of a crime is the highest and best use of our military. Did he ever read To Kill a Mockingbird? Did he ever wonder what might happen if the accused were immediately executed without trial or representation? What a despicable and thoughtless sentiment it is to glorify killing someone without trial. And I'm obviously very sympathetic to what Senator Rand Paul is saying there. I think he's absolutely right. And what kind of society do we want to live in when you give the federal government such unmitigated power that they can just merely accuse anyone of anything, carry out the killing of those people, and then just be brazen about not caring whether or not it was a war crime? And by the way, this really does lead me to think back on a statement that JD Vance made prior to becoming vice president. He considers himself a post-liberal Republican. What does post-liberal mean? We're not talking about liberal versus conservative. We're talking about liberal democracy. Remember, he is a creation. His entire career has been manufactured by the likes of Peter Thiel, who is also running around with the Curtis Yarvins who want a monarchy as opposed to a liberal democracy in America. Just something to think about.
Yeah, so huge issues here. So first of all, again, I'm stunned to agree with Rand Paul. But the political spectrum is getting all jumbled now. So they're both Republicans. They're both guys we normally disagree with. So who's more right, who's more wrong? It's not even close. Rand Paul is totally right here. And JD Vance is maniacally wrong, terribly wrong, immorally wrong, un-American wrong. So we don't kill people without due process in this country. We're not supposed to do that. And we're not supposed to be the lawless ones. We're the ones who actually basically came up with the concept of human rights to begin with. Yeah, it's an oversimplification, but it's true. We did League of Nations, we did the United Nations, we did the Nuremberg trials. We brought the concept of human rights to the forefront in this world, and I'm super proud of that. Part of the reason we moved to America, because it's representing people's rights. Now we're saying, oh, we can blow up any ship anywhere. We don't care if it's not in our waters, it's in international waters. We don't have to present evidence. We don't have to prove anything. We just murder everyone on board, and that's totally fine. No, it's not totally fine. That's totally lawless. It's anarchy. It breaks down social order. It leads to more conflicts, and it's not what America's supposed to be about.
Right, and also, look, I love the cover story about how the Trump administration suddenly has gotten very serious about doing something about drug overdose deaths in the United States and doing something about fentanyl. But the US military buildup, which by the way includes more than 2,000 Marines off the shore of Venezuela, leads me to believe that this is about something other than fighting a drug war. And as we spoke about last Friday with Dave Smith and Scott Horton, there's this new marriage now in the Trump administration between the war on terror and the drug war. And that Frankenstein is not gonna benefit the American people. It's very clear to me, despite Donald Trump's denials over the weekend, that what's happening right now off the shore in Venezuela is meant to eventually lead to a regime change war. Trump wants to finish what he attempted to do on 2 separate occasions during his first term, which was topple Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela and potentially take hold of the largest oil reserve in the world.
So yeah, Mr. Nobel Peace Prize here, the anti-war candidate, one, that is a provocation to war to attack another country's ship in any context, boat, it doesn't matter, outside of the law. Number 2, he's pulled up half our fleet next to Venezuela. And so obviously he's threatening war there, and he's looking for them to respond, a provocation that's gonna be used as an excuse to try to do a coup and a war against Venezuela. What happened to no wars? And now he's changing the name of Department of Defense to Department of War.
Which is more accurate.
Okay, yeah, all right.
That's what they do.
So, okay, but like, can I get a confession? After we bomb Iran, now we're obviously trying to start a war in Venezuela, after he changes it to Department of War, that he was not an anti-war candidate. He was pretended to be anti-war, but he's not at all anti-war. So look, I'm gonna solve all the wars in one day. They're all gonna be, where is it, brother? Where? You haven't gotten anything resolved. So this lawlessness has a second problem. They're now, JD Vance is saying, well, we were designating them as terrorists so we can kill them. And Rand Paul's right, he's like, no, wait. That's not how it works. If the government officially designates some group as terrorists, you might be able to take legal or financial action against them. But you can't just murder them by just calling them a terrorist. Because then you could call anyone a terrorist, and without any evidence, murder them.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's like, no, there has to be a legal process. And so if you're calling them a terrorist officially, then you have to go to court. You could take out their bank accounts. You could pursue legal action. But if we're gonna be a lawless country, then some authoritarian guy, whether it's Trump or Vance or someone else entirely, once you don't have any laws left, somebody's gonna fill that vacuum and go, okay, now I'm taking power and there's nothing you could do about it. Oh, guess what? Now all my domestic enemies are terrorists.
I mean, that's coming. And this is the kind of democratic backsliding that we should all be very concerned about. All right, we gotta take a break. We'll be right back with that bombshell story from the New York Times.
All right, guys. So first, let's go to Super Chat. Phil J says, there's many documentaries on 9/11. I would ask demolition experts, and it's not the steel melted, it's that the floor's pancaked. Okay, so Phil, I wanna make sure that I got your point in here. So interesting, and we'll keep looking into it. And there's nothing wrong with talking about it to any side. And maybe one day we'll do a debate on it, right? And have the two sides actually represented by super competent people? Because I don't know, and I want to hear the two sides on it. But one side or the other telling me, trust me, bro, that's the science of it, is not gonna work, okay? So you have to come with evidence. Both sides. Callie Millie Mo says, great interview today. Great to see Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ro Khanna hugging at the victims' presser last week. And finally, some questions on 9/11 on TYT. P.S. Review the pictures of Pentagon after the attack and guys in suits moving evidence. So again, I don't know about that, but I hear you. I mean, look, I'm sure I'm wrong about this because otherwise other people would have flipped out. But they released that video of the Pentagon getting hit by the plane. I watched that video with JR and Jesus and Ben 20 times, 40 times. I never saw a plane in the video. Everybody just says there is a plane in the video. So if maybe, I don't know, send it in or something if there's a slow motion version of it, because I can't find the plane. So if they did that, that would be the most, if there's no plane in that video, that is the most masterful piece of gaslighting in world history. So anyways, Super Platinum Man says, did you guys see the clips of Officer Brandon Tatum's interview with Bibi?
Oh my God.
He admitted that during his trip to Israel, his pastor was spat on only once.
Only once.
So it wasn't that bad.
I feel nauseous thinking about it, to be honest with you. Yeah.
No, I didn't know about that phenomenon until recently. I know you're not allowed to say anything against Israel. I know.
No,
but apparently it is a thing that some of the Orthodox, not all Israelis by a long shot, some lunatics spit on Christians, and I presume other religions too, because they think they're the superior race and these loser, inferior people are next to them, so they spit on them.
Guys,
what the hell is that? Are you nuts?
I'm having a real problem with the percentage of public figures who are men in this country just openly and willingly debasing themselves.
Yeah, I don't know anything about so-called Officer Brandon Tatum. All I know is if you're thanking someone for only spitting on you once, you're the weakest bitch I've ever heard of in my entire life. So you should talk to a therapist about how weak and pathetic you are. Oh, thank you so much for only spitting on me once, my lord and master. What the hell? Why is he your daddy, you loser? Pathetic. Edwin Baez says, rocked my MLK t-shirt Friday and it never looked better. But more importantly, I'm a social worker at an inner city high school. And it was a dope conversation piece with the kiddos and the coworkers. Edwin, I love that story. It's at shoptyt.com. And I was wearing it this weekend as well. You saw it maybe in a couple of the videos. I love that MLK shirt, shoptyt.com.
And thank you for the work you do, because it's super important and doesn't get enough appreciation.
100%. And guys, the Free Palestine collection, including all ceasefire now, 100% of the profits goes to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. And that's getting a lot of good hype because people like the idea of saying, we're not like our crooked politicians and our crooked media. We support Palestinians. There's so much more here, but I'll have to do it after the break. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Just want to read one comment from Super Chat, and then I'll read a lot more comments during the bonus episode because a lot of you wrote in supporting and criticizing, and I want to give you guys all an opportunity to speak up and be part of the show. Okay, so in Liberty and Guns We Trust said on Super Chat, I'm a libertarian, and of course today I have to stay late at work. I missed the episode with Dave and Scott, LOL. Nice work though, Anna. Enjoyed the rerun, love where this channel is going, you guys rock.
Thank you.
So we appreciate that. And what I want to tell you guys is, yeah, if you do miss anything and it happens, that's another good reason to be a member. So members get any of our content both live and immediately first and anytime you want, including the stuff that's not necessarily online anywhere else. And earlier, somebody wrote in with a great story about Chapter, our sponsor, and how they saved $734. It was organic and beautiful and I appreciate it. Chapter's actually given us a number for ourselves, so I want you guys to know it. So if you are on Medicare or you know someone on Medicare, you want to get money off of their premiums, just talk to them for 20 minutes, it's free. Anyway, it's 707 TYT help. No, guys, not that one. We got a new number. So that's a good number too, you can call it, but it's 707 TYT help. 707 TYT help. All right, Anna.
All right, let's get into this huge expose on JP Morgan Chase and its relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, published by the New York Times. So, a stunning new report from the New York Times has revealed that Jeffrey Epstein was actually one of JP Morgan Chase's top clients. The bank handled over $1 billion worth of transactions for Epstein and even continued doing business with the predator, even when his crimes were receiving public attention. So this story is gonna take you for a ride. Buckle in as I give you all the details. So Epstein first set up an account with JP Morgan Chase back in the 1980s, but the bank didn't really pay much attention to him at first. It wasn't until the 90s when he started garnering some attention. And that was, of course, when he became far wealthier. Now, Epstein struck up a friendship with someone by the name of Jess Stanley, who ran the bank's private banking division. Remember that name, it's gonna come up quite a bit. Now, this division handled the bank's most affluent clients, the richest clients they had. And Stanley, again, important person to remember that name, it's gonna come up a lot. Now, by 2003, Epstein's net worth was estimated to be $300 million. That year, he was the #1 revenue generator for JP Morgan's private banking division. Once you start making money for the bank is gonna look out for you, right? You're one of the top clients. But there were also, at that time, some pretty significant red flags in regard to Epstein. For example, in 2003, Epstein withdrew more than $175,000 in cash from his JP Morgan accounts. Outside investigators later found that Epstein paid almost that exact amount to women that year. Okay, well, they didn't investigate it, but the red flags were there. JP Morgan recognized that those withdrawals needed to be reported to federal regulators that monitor large cash transactions, but the bank failed to treat those withdrawals as an early warning system for itself. You know, he's generating some money for your bank. Maybe you look the other way when these red flags arise. Now later, JP Morgan's own anti-money laundering specialists would admit that Epstein's huge withdrawals in 2003 were a signal that he could have been committing crimes. But the warning signs only got worse throughout the years. So by 2005, 2 years later, victims of Epstein's abuse were speaking out. And Epstein's interactions with the bank got a little shadier, let's just put it that way. According to the Times, Epstein's huge cash withdrawals continued, a total of more than $1.7 million in 2004 and 2005, according to records we reviewed, meaning the New York Times, much of which was used to procure girls and young women. And at Epstein's request, JP Morgan even opened accounts for 2 young women without even speaking to them or investigating the personal details of said women, which, how do you even do that? But they did that. Again, JP Morgan was belatedly acknowledged or has belatedly acknowledged that some of Epstein's transactions were suspicious. There were definitely red flags, but said nothing to federal watchdogs anyway at the time. Meanwhile, the bank kept doing business with Epstein. And when I say business, I mean a lot of business. Okay, so JP Morgan would ultimately open at least 134 accounts for Epstein, his companies, and his associates. And Epstein wasn't just paying millions of dollars in fees to JP Morgan, he was also helping the bank find new clients. He was recruiting new clients. So he's doing all sorts of favors and making money, finding new clients for the bank. And here are some of the individuals who Epstein referred to JP Morgan, not all of whom eventually did business with the bank, by the way. So you have Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Sergey Brin, who is the co-founder of Google. And then you fast forward to 2006 when Epstein was arrested and indicted for soliciting prostitution from a teenage girl. Stanley, remember the person I was referring to earlier, that was his first main contact at JP Morgan, insists that he discussed the situation with JP Morgan Chase's current CEO, Jamie Dimon. though Diamond has denied that. Eventually, JP Morgan Chase decided to keep loaning money to Epstein. They kept loaning money to Epstein with the caveat of not proactively soliciting new investment business from him. And then by 2008, Epstein was facing lawsuits from numerous victims. In June, he pleaded guilty to soliciting sex from a minor. So even the rank and file staff at JP Morgan, JP Morgan's private banking division wanted Epstein gone. But Stanley in particular, according to the New York Times reporting, made sure that Epstein remained a client. And again, Jamie Dimon is implicated. Around that time, as two executives in the private bank emailed about whether Epstein's accounts would be closed, one of them said the decision was pending Dimon review. Another internal email noted that the bank's general counsel, Stephen Cutler, was reviewing Epstein-related documents for Jamie. Yet in his own sworn deposition, Dimon said he did not recall knowing anything about Jeffrey Epstein until 2019. And then finally, around 2008, a rumor was circulating that Dimon might become the Treasury Secretary in the Obama administration, in which case Stanley would be a prime contender to succeed him as chief executive. Stanley emailed Epstein about Dimon's status. Epstein responded, "We can help push Obama."
Yeah, well, of course they could. The top banks were Obama's #1 donors back in 2008.
And by the way, I should note that Epstein was actually in prison while he was emailing with Stanley on this.
That's amazing. So Cutler, who was doing compliance there, that Anna alluded to, said at one point, this is not a man of honor or moral or morality, basically. And he's like, we should not be doing business with him. So he was super clear that there is something wrong here, very, very wrong. And basically what he's saying there is there's not a lot of people at JP Morgan Chase who are worried about morality and honor. What he's saying is he's gonna get us in trouble, guys. This guy's thermonuclear. And so the way that he's withdrawing money is a clear-cut case of wrongdoing, right? And that we would normally flag and it would be a huge problem for us. We're worried that this fits the pattern of sex trafficking, and apparently, I don't know if he was worried about other things as well. So Citibank eventually got worried enough that they wound up settling with 200 Epstein victims to the tune of, JP Morgan Chase, to the tune of $290 million. They did another settlement with the Virgin Islands for $75 million. This is all about the Epstein case.
Yes.
So when you settle for $365 million overall, that is a massive admission of guilt. That is not a little amount of money that you make the case go away. That's saying we did something deeply wrong.
Yeah.
So why did you do that thing?
Well,
right?
let me get to that actually, because Jess Stanley is the one who's like constantly advocating for Epstein and to keep Epstein as a client at JP Morgan. Well, you might be wondering, well, was he implicated in the Epstein files? Is that a possibility? According to the Times, while Epstein was under house arrest in November of 2009, Jess Stanley visited his sprawling Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, where girls and young women later accused Epstein of raping and trafficking them. "Next time we're here together," Stanley wrote, "I owe you much." Other messages were littered with apparent sexual references. Quote, "That was fun, say hi to Snow White," end quote.
Yeah, now you have your answer.
He emailed that to Epstein in 2010. Epstein responded by asking which character he would like next. "Beauty and the Beast," Stanley answers. This is so disgusting. This is so utterly disgusting. Okay, and then around there's so much to this, guys, so please stick with me here. So around 2010, Stanley had a conversation with a woman in her 20s. The woman would later allege in a class action lawsuit, which was eventually settled, that Epstein sexually abused her for more than a dozen years, and that he forced her and other victims to engage in commercial sex with certain select friends. Now, according to Stanley, the woman suggested that he come by her apartment in an Upper East Side building owned by Epstein's brother. On the appointed day, Stanley arrived And after chatting in the living room, they went to her bedroom and had sex. Afterward, Stanley took a shower. He was out of the building in less than an hour and walked back to work. So there's other horrifying details to this story, but the point here is that, I mean, for everything that we hear about people being debanked for small reasons, I mean, in this case, you have all these red flags that this individual that you're doing business with, a client of JP Morgan, is trafficking humans, trafficking girls, okay? There's mounting evidence as a result of the public lawsuits and the prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein that he was preying on minors. And they continued doing business with him at JP Morgan anyway.
So, look, when you get to Snow White, if someone's overaged and you're playing Snow White games, look, it's not my business, okay? And I don't care. That's not a thing that, because then that gets into character assassination, etc. It's not my place to judge you morally when you're consenting adults. But if you're playing Snow White with someone who's underage, now we're gonna have a lot of freaking problems, okay? And so now I wanna ask you guys this. Look, I don't know if the people at JP Morgan Chase overall thought, yeah, we might be opening ourselves up to a ton of liability, which turns out they did, right? And that the money we make from this is not gonna make up for the lawsuits, which it didn't, right? And all of our careers are in jeopardy, but we should do it anyway. Why they made that decision is a very important and interesting question. As for Staley, it seems a little personal based on the reporting from the New York Times. That was a little bit easier to understand, right? And terrible and awful if the implications are correct. But what I can't understand is, how come there's been no accountability for anyone legally at JP Morgan Chase? So we all know they did it. They paid $365 million. New York Times has this huge story explaining how they did it. That we now know that they were guys internally whose job was to put up red flags, and they not only put up red flags, they were waving them like crazy. Red flag, red flag. So, but the executives decided to partake in an illegal activity anyway, and nobody's even asked, hey, is anybody gonna get arrested for that? Because apparently no one's ever gonna get arrested for anything related to Epstein, and that is weird. That is super strange. And so when people react like, oh yeah, that's no big deal. No, of course, I mean, obviously there should be no accountability at JP Morgan. Why? Why should there be no accountability? Forget the sex part, okay? Don't, but like put it aside for a second. We have a lot of laws to prevent banks from helping people do money laundering, sex trafficking, and all these different crimes. Are we going to enforce those laws against JP Morgan Chase, or are they too powerful and we're not allowed to criticize a bank?
I think we should ask the president, who purports to care about law and order only in the very narrow context of liberal cities and the ability to send, troops to those cities to essentially cause shock and awe and not actually do anything about crime. Look, you care about crime, then this is the type of crime that totally destroys society. The type of crime that goes, honestly, like unmitigated because they happen to be powerful people, moneyed interests. It's absolutely disgusting. These are the types of people who should suffer the consequences of their actions for completely ignoring the laws we have on our books that prevent banks from doing business with individuals who are clearly doing something shady here, illegal. And in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, trafficking literal minors. And JP Morgan finally came clean about the full extent of its dealings with Epstein after he had already died, allegedly committed suicide, and Stanley had already left the company at that point. No current executives were made to resign over the matter, and Jamie Dimon still remains one of the most powerful bankers, not just in this country, on this planet. And one final thing that I'll say is, in 2011, Epstein's activity at that point had become so suspicious that many employees at the bank were just, they had soured on Epstein, right? But they continued doing business with him anyway. They expressed their displeasure about Epstein, but kept doing business. None of them took action. So he remained a client at JP Morgan. Meanwhile, in 2011, to the pleasant surprise of JP Morgan's investment bankers in Israel, they were granted an audience with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The bankers informed Stanley, who forwarded their email to Epstein with a one-word message: thanks.
No, guys, that is definitive that Epstein had enough power to get the Prime Minister of Israel to show up somewhere as a favor.
Yeah.
But don't ask any questions. If you ask questions, you're a bad person. You're just supposed to sit here and take it. Don't ask any questions of JP Morgan Chase. Don't ask any questions of Israel. Don't ask any questions of our government. Don't ask any questions at all. There are no clients. Wait a minute. If there are no clients, why did JP Morgan Chase settle for $295 million with 200 victims? How could there be no clients if there were 200 victims? Why would they pay nearly $300 million if there were no clients at all? Yeah. So is our government ever going to prosecute a single one of those hundreds of powerful men who did these crimes? And the overwhelming answer both Democratic and Republican Party has given us is hell no. We will always protect the guilty. And you have to presume that means they could do it again. And again, our government would protect them and not us or our children.
All right, when we come back, we're gonna talk about the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles getting attacked for doing the right thing.
Let's go to YouTube members. Lots of interesting different comments here. No Kings wrote in, I respect the fact that MTG was on this platform, and I respect that she stood up for Epstein victims. Tim Powell said, selfish moment, but I was in high school when 9/11 happened, and I questioned everything. I was labeled a traitor, not a patriot, a USA hater, etc. It's nice to see that I may have been right all along. Look, Tim, that's what I'm saying. Whether you're right or wrong, I'm now at a point where I'm past anyone bullying me on asking questions. And if you don't work in media, you might not understand what I mean. But if you work in media, you're bullied 24/7. If you bring up anything that is outside of the official story, so they look at you like, are you one of those lunatics? Should we fire him? Fire him. Should I fire him now or should I fire him a minute from now? So that's why, like, if you're wondering, well, how come not a single cable news anchor has called it a genocide in Gaza, right? It's like 86% of genocide scholars say that it is. It's obviously a genocide. Not one of them in the news business can conjure up the courage to do that. No, they can't because they're worried that they're gonna get fired. If you say things that are obvious and true, you will get fired. So, hey, that's their goddamn problem. I work in digital media. Titan says, saw a short article titled "The War on Youth." It talks about how millennials and Gen Z are paying the price for the greed of boomers. When someone stands against any of this, I'll take it, even if it's MTG. Guys, what's happening, the reason, in my opinion, that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker and others are doing this is because it's bubbling up. People are so angry, so their voters, their viewers, etc., are telling them, we can't afford anything. God damn it, we can't afford anything, right? Including houses, etc. And so that's why they're now becoming more populist as we speak. They're detached from mainstream media, they're detached from the official Republican Party, and they're beginning to listen to their voters and viewers. I've never seen it before. It's an amazing development. Florida Pixie Dragon says, I'm finding more respect for MTG as these interviews progress. When she acknowledged that common ground was good for the country and representing constituents over donors, that was terrific. Yeah, she's calling out donors, again, unprecedented. She said she called out the Republican Party. She talked about how she was wrong at different times. Sean won MCC once said, great conversation, great interview. MTG is a stand-up woman, I appreciate her. Brianne Ramitz disagrees, says, sorry, but this seems like a softball kid glove interview, especially compared to recent interviews with Congress people on our side. Probably some of the toughest interviews we've ever done is with Ro Khanna. You can go back and confirm that, okay? Especially around the time they were all caving on to Biden, right? And yet he comes back on all the time. We agree. And when we agree, they're not tough interviews. What am I gonna yell at him for something that makes sense, right? When you say, oh, just trust me, bro, on Biden, that doesn't make sense, and we get into a conflict. So if we got into Ukraine, we might have had a disagreement with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Unfortunately, we didn't ran out of time, but when she comes on and agrees with our position, okay, you say don't take yes for an answer. I hear you, and there's more of you. Joey said Marjorie needs to repent for all her bigoted stances on votes. Does she have to do that before she comes to our side on Israel and Epstein? Like, should we prevent her from coming to our side because she hasn't repented? Bruce City Mike says, what about the children you followed and harassed repeatedly after surviving a massacre in their school? She did do that, and then you saw this. All right, so you got a message for John Idarola?
Tell him to be nice to me.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Guys, we're gonna be at ArabCon. Both Anna and I will be there, so I hope you guys can check it out. That's going to be a little bit later in September, but you can get the tickets at arabcon.org. Arabcon, that's CON.org, and check out both Anna and I. All right, what's next, Anna?
I want to talk a little bit about what happened with the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles, which totally broke my heart, but it's worth knowing about the kind of intimidation tactics that are deployed and unfortunately will work if you allow it to work. So, the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles made the grave mistake of appearing to show humanity toward the Palestinians and ultimately caved to pressure and backtracked amid a wave of fury from Israel supporters. By the way, you can support Israel, but also acknowledge when Israel is engaging in bad behavior or genocidal behavior, but apparently that's not allowed.
No, for a lot of people, they literally cannot do that. They're constitutionally incapable of it. They're so biased, they can't see straight, and this is a perfect example.
Yeah, so this is just a really heartbreaking story. So last week, the museum put up a post on their Instagram account, and I really commend them for doing this. The image shows 6 interlocking arms forming a Jewish star. The arms have varying skin tones, as you can see in the image, and one has numbers tattooed on it. It reads, "Never again can't only mean never again for Jews." And then the slides that followed, the image read, Jews were raised to say never again. That means never again for anyone. Standing with humanity does not betray our people, it honors them. And I totally 100% agree with that sentiment. Jews must not let the trauma of our past silence our conscience. And by the way, there are many Jews in this country across the globe who agree with that sentiment. It's just, those who don't tend to be the loudest, they tend to be aggressive, and they tend to coerce people and threaten people, bully people into going along with what they want. So unsurprisingly, that did stoke a ton of backlash, including from groups like Stop Anti-Semitism. And they left this comment on the museum's Instagram post. Donors seeing this, please DM us. We're happy to help redirect your giving our way, an organization that focuses solely on the Jewish people and fighting the bigotry we face. Others accused the museum of engaging in blood libel.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And the slew of negative comments and threats unfortunately worked. The museum took down the beautiful post, the wonderful post that shows that they're consistent in why that museum exists in the first place. They even issued an apology, and in a statement they said, we recently posted an item on social media that was part of a pre-planned social media campaign intended to promote inclusivity and community that was easily open to misinterpretation by some to be a political statement reflecting the ongoing situation in the Middle East. That was not our intent.
That's not true at all. Yeah, okay, so let me jump in. Number one, to the beautiful people at the Holocaust Museum LA that originally did that message, we see you and we appreciate you and thank you for being on the side of morality and decency and having principles that you signed up for when you went to go work at that museum. And I want everybody to know these beautiful Jewish American brothers and sisters that are trying to fight hard for everyone else, okay? Not just for themselves, but for humanity, for the Palestinians, etc. And the people who authorized that in the beginning, because obviously it had to get authorized at some point, thank you. You did the right thing. I know why you had to take it back. That statement is a lie. There's no question that that's a lie. So yeah, they meant it as in solidarity, obviously, with what's happening in Gaza. That's the obvious implication. So why did they, if you're at the Holocaust Museum and you're in solidarity on never again about a genocide, why would there even be a controversy, right? The controversy exists because there are some pro-Israeli thugs in this country, and they are thugs. And they do not represent all Jewish people. I don't think they represent a majority of Jewish people at all. I think they're a minority here who prioritize Israel over Jews in America, over any Americans. And look, Stop Anti-Semitism isn't hiding it. They're like, no, never again means solely for Jews, right? Why would it only mean for Jews? And if it does only mean for Jews, then it's kind of useless, isn't it? If I said, you know what, no one should ever harm the Turks, but the rest of you can go F off. You'd be like, well, that's a useless statement, right? In fact, it's kind of a hateful statement. What do you mean only you should never be hurt again? And that implies that everyone else is free to get hurt. I mean, at a Holocaust museum, you're demanding that a Holocaust museum say never again only applies to Jews and everyone else can get massacred. And if you don't realize you're the bad guy, you're the villain, you're the thug in the story, I know you don't realize it. Those people, they think that they're heroes. They're like, we're fighting anti-Semitism, but they're gonna kill every one of us. We have to murder them first, murder them. Holocaust Museum, you have to be in favor of genocide. You have to be in favor of murder. And that's what Jews stand for. No, they don't. And other folks, the good folks inside the Holocaust Museum, other good folks, whether you're Jewish or not in this country, you gotta start standing up to the thugs. If you give in to the thugs every time, the rest of the country and the rest of the world is gonna think, I guess that's what all Jews think. I guess all Jews think that the Holocaust and genocides shouldn't happen to them, but if Israel's doing it, that's great. That's what, no, most Jews don't think that. But now you have these thugs going around telling everyone, screaming it from the rooftops. If anyone is anti-genocide, we're gonna eliminate them, we're gonna get them fired, we're gonna cancel them, maybe arrest them and deport them. And if you're working at a Holocaust museum, you better not have any sympathy for any other race or religion. Are you insane? Do you have any idea how bad you're making everyone else look? But they don't see it. Forget the thugs that Stop Anti-Semitism, they're some of the worst people on earth, okay? But the others, the people who actually put the pressure on here, whoever you are, they're addressing the donors. That was very telling. Stop Anti-Semitism is.
That's what they do, yeah.
They're like, now donors, remember, only, what did they say? Focuses solely on the Jewish people. If you better have no empathy for anyone else. You're gonna let those sons of bitches represent you? You're gonna put the ugliest face to your people that I have ever seen. So like Yuval Harari said the other day, brilliant Israeli author. He said, is this the new face of Judaism? For 2,000 years, Jews were the champions of surviving injustice after injustice. And they helped others survive it in the civil rights movement, etc. That's the Judaism we all knew and loved and appreciated. And now it's gonna get turned into, you have to be pro-genocide as long as we're doing it. And it's not we, it's another government. Israel is not our government. But no, in order to protect Israel, small group of hardcore thugs will go and intimidate anyone, even the Holocaust Museum in LA, to make sure that no one is ever allowed to criticize Israel. I'm sick of them, you should all be sick of them, and you should never listen to them. When those thugs come around, you should tell everyone, we're Americans. We get to say whatever we want, we get to fight any genocide we want of any religion, of any government. And if you thugs come around here, what's your names? Give me your name, give me your address, tell me who you work for. Because you're obviously racist. I mean, there's no question, they're admitting their racism. They're saying, yeah, as long as it's another religion, yes again, yes again. That's not the Holocaust Museum, they were trying to do the right thing. That's these thugs that go around trying to intimidate everyone. And if you, especially you work in media, they're gonna try to get you fired big time. okay? And if you listen to them, then we're not gonna have a country left. We're all gonna be servants of Israel and do whatever outrageous war crimes and crimes against humanity that they order us to do. They're not fighting anti-Semitism. No one spreads anti-Semitism more than these groups that say, yes again, give me another genocide as long as Israel is doing it. And if anybody criticizes them, we should eliminate them from America. No, we're gonna fight those thugs tooth and nail. And if you give in to those thugs, you're letting them win. You're letting the most immoral people represent you and have just put the sickest face to a community that I love. Don't let them do that to you, man. They're not fighting hate, they are the hate. All right, we got a bonus episode for the members. We have more really important stories.
Don't tease anything. We'll be back.
All right, members, we'll see you there.